Hello, 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 and happy marvelous Monday. I hope that you are well. Listen, I am so excited that you are joining me today. I am none other than Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. Today, I am touching on and sharing from the topic why a landlord paid thousands of dollars for a tenant's problem. I promise that the information that I share today is going to help some of you who are landlords, some of you who are thinking about becoming a landlord. And listen, if you are a tenant, I have some information that I want you to hold on to. I want you to hear the information that I'm sharing today because it's not just for landlords, but it's also for tenants. And I'm going to ask that if you have questions, if you have comments, remarks, or observations, throw it in the comment section. Show me some love in the comment section. Let me know where you are tuning in from. I'm live on Facebook. I'm live on LinkedIn. I am live on, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. So if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please check me out on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online. You can find me there, Landlord Life with Karissa Spann. All right. The information that I share is not legal advice. Sometimes people make the mistake. They ask me legal questions, and some people believe that I am a landlord and tenant attorney. I am, in fact, not. So I just want to put that disclaimer up there that the information I share is not legal advice, but I am sharing the information that is used in the industry. So best tips and practices, that's what I will be sharing. And so today I am sharing this unfortunate story where a landlord did in fact have to pay thousands of dollars for a tenant's problem. And I know that sometimes that can seem like it may seem like it's unfair, for landlords to have to pay for problems and issues. But many of you who have been following me over the months, over the years, you have heard me say over and over again that if a landlord treat their business like a business, it will pay them like a business. If a landlord, if a housing provider, if a property manager, if a new investor, if you treat it like a hobby, well, in fact, it's going to pay you like a hobby. And so it costs nothing but your time to show up each and every week. This is what I do on Mondays. I am live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm answering questions. I'm sharing information. Why? Because I recognize the importance of educating the entire rental community. So please, if you find that any of this information is of value today, please like, please tag, please share it with someone else. Maybe the information is not for you. Maybe it's for someone that you know, but I promise it is for somebody today. And again, I'm touching on why a landlord paid thousands of dollars for a tenant's problem. Not their problem, but it was their tenant's problem. And so I have one mission today, and that's to make sure that the information that I share is clear, it's relevant. I'm happy to join you today. I'm happy that you're joining me today. So as I get into this discussion, I want you to listen to the information that I'm sharing. I want you to ask questions because that's what this is all about. It's all about sharing information. It's all about making sure that as a community, a rental community, and we don't have to be in the same geographical location, but it's all about making sure that we are moving together, that we are moving in sync together as landlords, as tenants, as rental communities. I believe in improving, right? I believe in adding value. And so that's what this segment is all about. I'm going to share some information. It's going to be heartbreaking, I promise. And it's always heartbreaking for me when I learn that a landlord has had to pay thousands of dollars, especially if it's a situation that they could avoid, right? And in this situation, it definitely could have been avoidable. But unfortunately, maybe they just didn't get the information. Maybe they just didn't know. Maybe they were self-managing their property, right? Sometimes that happens. But at the end of the day, there are laws in place to protect tenants. There are laws in place to protect you as a housing provider, as a landlord. There are things that are in place, but if you don't know, then that's the unfortunate part about it. because sometimes what you don't know can and will hurt you. And this landlord found out the hard way. This is not the first. I've shared on matters very similar to what I'm going to share today. I've shared stories over and over again about how landlords make the mistakes that they make in their rental property business because they simply just don't know. But now here's the thing. I've been in the industry long enough to recognize that sometimes landlords don't know, but then there are landlords who just don't care. Um, but that's no excuse, right? And so I'm going to touch on that today. I'm talking about why a landlord made the horrible mistake of being responsible for paying for a tenant's problem. So when it comes to landlords, when it comes to managing your rental property business, here's what I want you to know and understand. And that's this, that as a landlord, you do have a responsibility to make sure that their rental property is decent, is safe, and it is sanitary. There are laws in place to not just to oversee, well, I won't say oversee, but there are laws in place to make sure that you are governing your business in a way that, number one, that it protects you. And I know that sometimes landlords, especially in areas that are pro-tenant, some landlords don't necessarily agree with the regulations. They don't agree with the laws that are in place. They feel like maybe in some areas, and in fact they are, some laws are in favor of tenants more than landlords, but that's not the case for everybody. That's not the case for all jurisdictions. One of the things that I say is that it all depends on where that rental property is, because from one jurisdiction to the next, the laws are different. They can be similar, but they can be very different. And so you have to know and understand what you can and cannot do. You have to know and understand as a landlord. And if you're a tenant, just hold on. I have some information I'm sharing today for you as well. But as a landlord, you want to understand what you are required to do. There are some things that you must do, and there are things that you may do, and you have to know the difference. And when you don't, sometimes you end up making the mistake that this one landlord made, and it cost them thousands of dollars. Okay. And so I want to share on that today. I want to share the common mistakes that sometimes people make because maybe they didn't know, maybe they didn't care. In any event, I'm not here to judge. I'm only sharing information, hopefully to prevent or eliminate or maybe reduce the risk of you, landlords, going down this rabbit hole, because that's really what it's all about. And so when this happens, when landlords make these mistakes, let me just start here, that there are financial consequences, right? There can be significant financial consequences when you make these small mistakes that cost thousands of dollars. All right. So this landlord made the mistake. I'm going to just jump right into it. This landlord made the mistake of having to pay thousands of dollars for their tenants' bed bug infestation. Now, originally, I wanted to share the pictures, but the pictures are so gruesome. Maybe I will in an upcoming segment share the pictures, but the problem was so bad that the entire rental property, and it was a house, it was a 3-bedroom house, the entire property had to be treated. But the bed bugs were so bad in every room that if you walked in that rental property, you would likely have needed a hazmat suit because it was just that bad. So on top of the bed bug infestation, the tenant was a hoarder. So let me just break down what a hoarder is for those of you who don't know. A hoarder is someone who likes to collect things, and maybe they are excessive with the things that they collect. For instance, maybe they like to collect magazines and newspapers, right? And so in this tenant's home, there were mounds of magazines. There were mounds of just trash. There were mounds of recyclable type of material that was just sitting in the apartment. There were fire hazards, there were health hazards, and this was a clear sign that somebody had not conducted an inspection in that rental property for a long time. Now, I'm not here to judge why a landlord won't or didn't or refuse to, whatever, inspect the rental property. All I'm saying is that as a housing professional, this is something that every housing provider should be doing. Why? Because if you are treating your business like a business, you don't know how the property is performing if you don't know the condition of that property. And how do you know the condition if you're not conducting an inspection? So whether it's you or someone else who is managing or assisting you with overseeing that rental property, inspections should be conducted. Whether it's once a year, whether it's twice a year, in many cases for some who are watching, a replay, and thank you, by the way, some are conducting inspections quarterly. In any event, inspections should be conducted. Well, I'm not certain that inspections happen at this particular property because the situation was so bad that not only did you possibly need a hazmat suit to walk through there, I'm afraid that if anybody lit up a cigarette to smoke, that the whole place would have gone up in flames because it was just that congested and crowded. The tenant had been holding on to food and trash and recyclable things and magazines and newspapers. There were mounds of it in every room. It looked almost like a labyrinth maze, that there was a path that the tenant had to walk through just to get from one room to the next. Now, the unfortunate part about this situation is that the tenant was elderly and the owner of the rental property is also elderly. Now, maybe the owner didn't have anyone to assist them and they had gotten up in age and they just couldn't do it anymore. Well, the tenant had roaches and mice and bed bugs. So bad to the point that it cost this landlord thousands of dollars just to resolve the bed bug issue alone. Thousands of dollars. That property had to be treated multiple times. But now here's the thing. Before the property was able to be treated by the pest control company, the owner also had to pay out of pocket to help this tenant get rid of some of the extra things that had been sitting around, like the open food containers, which was attracting rodents and mice and probably rats. Now, the difference between mice and rats is the size. Or a mouse might be this small, whereas a rat could be this big, as large as my head and greater. I've seen really, really large rats. There were holes throughout the property in almost every room. The floors were so filthy. The property just reeked with odor. And it's no telling how long it had gone on. And so this owner had to pay thousands of dollars to get rid of the bed bug issue. But before that could happen, they also had to pay someone to go in and help that tenant to clean up. Now, I think that in situations like this, and I'm sure that some of you have come into acknowledgement, maybe some of you have experienced this. I'm sure that had a little attention had been given to this rental property, maybe, just maybe about 5-10 years ago, that owner could have helped this tenant avoid going down this road, because this was a costly mistake. The owner did not agree to paying for this pest control issue. But here is why it was the owner's responsibility. Because when that owner initiated that rental lease agreement to rent that 3-bedroom home to the tenant, they put in their lease that the owner would be responsible for paying for pest control services. Now, it didn't matter based off of that contractual lease agreement. It didn't matter that it was the tenant's responsibility. It didn't matter that it was the tenant's fault because the owner put all of that responsibility on their self to say that they would be responsible for pest control. There was nothing in the lease that says that if there are any pest control issues, to contact me, to contact the owner, meaning, or let me just word it like this, because in my rental lease agreement, I have language that stipulates if there is acknowledgement or awareness of pest control issues, and I define what that is. It could be a roach, a bed bug, a spider, an ant, a mouse, whatever. When the tenant see the problem, the tenant is responsible for contacting me within 5 days. That is clearly spelled out in my lease. Okay. And if that does not happen, any costs associated with me having to pay for pest control, now it is the tenant's responsibility to pay for it. Now, here's where it can get a little tricky. And I know that some of you are going to email me, some of you are going to call me, some of you are going to text me, and that's quite all right. But here's where it gets tricky. Now, if the property manager, if the owner is responsible for having to pay that expense, and if it is in writing that the tenant is ultimately responsible for that cost, then the owner, by all means, pay the cost, pay the bill, and invoice the tenant. Give the tenant the option to pay the bill in full or to come up with a repayment plan to repay it within a certain amount of time. There are ways to handle situations like this. And so, unfortunately for this owner, they put all of that responsibility on themselves to say that they were going to pay for pest control. Now, mind you, this tenant had been in this property for years. Years of living like this, years of no inspection taking place. I mean, there were multiple mistakes made in this situation, and it is heartbreaking. It is unfortunate. And I know that a lot of you are really trying to do the right thing. You just want to rent your property to a deserving family. You're not trying to get rich off of it, right? Some of you inherited rental properties. Some of you had a desire to just get into the business and rent the property out. But in any event, it is the owner's responsibility to maintain decent, safe, and sanitary housing. And so if that is your responsibility, whether you are owning the property or maybe you manage the property, please make sure that you are protecting you as well as that property from situations like this, where it's costing you thousands of dollars. So this owner has lost out in major ways because this owner is putting out more money that's coming in. I don't know about you, but that's bad for business. If you're putting more out than what's coming in, and there's still expenses that are required for this rental property for upkeep and taxes and things of that sort, I'm willing to believe that maybe there's a mortgage because the property was refinanced at one point. Maybe there's still a mortgage on the property. And so if the tenant has minimum rent to pay, and the owner is putting so much money out because of the issues that are going on at the property, and there is no real system in place to manage that rental property, I don't see how that is a plausible or the best business decision for anybody to take on, or to believe that if they keep going down that path, that it's going to work in their favor. And so I did want to share from that thought today that if you treat your business like a business, it's going to pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. But I want to add more context to this. As a matter of fact, I want to add some tips, and then I do want to share some information for tenants, because when it comes to tenants, I always share how important it is for tenants and renters to understand that they have rights. As a tenant, you have rights. And in this situation, I want tenants to know that if you are renting a property, and it doesn't matter if it's an apartment, if it's a house, if it's a condo, it doesn't matter what you're renting. What's important is what is in writing. Look at the lease. Know what you are responsible for doing, because this situation, if someone had not intervened on behalf of the tenant, this owner probably would have had the tenant responsible for paying the cost for the bed bugs. Now, granted, maybe because it is the tenant's responsibility, the tenant was a hoarder, and there were some things that the tenant did which contributed to the problem. Maybe they should have been responsible. But as a tenant, please hear me when I tell you that because you have rights, always look at what is in writing. Look at what is in the lease. And before you sign a lease, review it. Understand the terms and the conditions that you sign. Because if you sign a lease, let's say, for instance, in this situation, the owner took responsibility for paying and replacing everything, right? If that's what is in writing and something comes up and later the landlord says, oh, well, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you're responsible, so you have to pay for it. If it's not in writing, the landlord cannot enforce something that does not exist. So I want you to know that as a tenant, you do have rights. Look at the terms of that rental lease agreement. Now, let me just also add this. If you're a tenant and if you sign a lease agreeing to the terms and the conditions, whether you understood it, whether you completely agree with it or not, if you signed it, it is a legally binding document. You are required to adhere to what you signed to. But now here's some additional things that sometimes landlords make the mistake in doing. First and foremost is this, and I share this when I'm working with coaching clients, because I strongly believe that before tenants move in, they should, as an owner, as a property manager, they should understand who's going to be in that rental property. Sometimes owners make the huge mistake. They neglect proper tenant screening. That is a huge mistake, and it's a big problem, but it continues to happen. When owners, when landlords, when property managers fail to screen tenants, and I see your comments coming in. Hey, Kim, thank you for tuning in. Hey, Christina, thank you so much for tuning in. When landlords fail to properly screen, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Here's why you're doing yourself a huge disservice, because at the most important and the most critical stage, here's what I just shared with someone today. Treat that conversation, treat the tenant screening like this, like you would with a marriage or a relationship. Typically people, and I'm pausing because I want to carefully gather my words as I say this. But typically people don't just jump into a marriage. People don't jump into a relationship. People don't jump into bed with people they don't know. Well, let me take that back. Some people do, but that's their business. Anyway, you want to treat that like a marriage. Understanding who that tenant is, doing your proper screening up front will help you to understand and know who's going to be in that rental property. Mistakes are made when that fails to happen. So please, as a landlord, and I know a lot of you are watching who are landlords, your property managers, please don't make the mistake of failing to properly screen tenants. That is so important. Kim, I want you to share this, Kim. I want you to share this because I know that you have colleagues in the industry who are property managers. So the consequences can be extremely costly, right? Because this oversight, it can lead to mispayments. It could lead to tenant damage. It could lead to unnecessary legal fees for evictions, because tenants, when they're not properly screened, you don't know, first and foremost, if they even have the capacity to pay the rent. And it's not the tenant's responsibility if the owner didn't properly screen them. It's not their fault, right? And so this is why I share this information. Now, here's another mistake that landlords make. Here's a mistake that I see when, and many of you are using professional leases, meaning that they've been prepared by some sort of organization, whether it's Realtor or GCAR or National Apartment Association, or whatever lease you use, right? There are a lot of leases now that are generated through software companies and software programs and things of that sort and organizations, which is great. But now there are handfuls of landlords who are not using these kind of services or platforms to create a lease for them. And so the rental lease agreements are incomplete. The huge mistake that I see in that is that the lease language, number one, is maybe not strong enough, or maybe there is not enough information in the lease. So in the story that I shared today, I talked about how the owner took responsibility for paying for all the repairs, all the pest controls, right? Pest control treatment. And it didn't really, to me, it didn't make sense for them to put that in the lease, because you can't control. And I know that on one hand, sometimes people just don't know, but the mistake that people make by not having a thorough lease or complete lease is that the costs associated with it sometimes can do more harm than good. Here's another mistake that landlords make. They make the mistake by not making repairs. Now, in this situation that I shared today, where inspections were not completed, there were tons of repairs that were needed in that property. Now, although I only touched on the pest control side, I touched on the hoarding side, I shared how there were holes in the property, there were substantial repairs that needed to be completed. And because those repairs were not completed when the problem was small, the problem will never, ever correct itself. And it ended up costing more money when, as a landlord, you're not making repairs. And so, because the laws are strongly in favor of the tenant in this jurisdiction, this was a financial nightmare for this elderly landlord. And my heart goes out because I can only imagine how that made her feel, to have to pay thousands of dollars for her tenant's problem. It wasn't her problem. She's elderly, but again, so was the tenant. The tenant had been there for years. And these are some of many, many common mistakes that landlords make. And so again, when you know better, you do better, because if you have a desire to treat your business like a business, it will pay you as such. But for those who don't know, there's information available. For those who don't care, there are consequences available. But this is, again, why I do this each and every Monday, 7:30 p.m. I'm here every Monday sharing tips, sharing information for the entire rental community. Because a lot of people can avoid going down this rabbit hole. A lot of people can avoid these mistakes if they just listen. Just listen to the advice, listen to the tips that I share, maybe share it with somebody else to help someone else avoid going down this lane, going down this path, because this was a costly mistake. And it is so unfortunate. My heart always go out, especially for seniors, especially for those who genuinely don't know. But unfortunately, this elderly owner had to pay, and she had to pay a lot of money. And so I'm hoping to help you. If you have questions as a tenant, I'm here to answer your questions. If you have questions as a landlord, I'm here to answer those questions. All right, so let me pause, because I shared quite a bit today. And I want you to understand the impact that, as a housing provider, the impact that it has on you when you are not doing the best, right? Some of you are new getting into property management. Some of you are new getting into the rental property business. And again, what you don't know can and will hurt you. So I do want to pause because if you have questions, I want to be able to answer your questions. So please, ma'am, please, sir, any questions that you have, throw it in the comment section. Let me know, because I want to take this time in this space to answer questions that you have. I see that I have viewers who are tuned in on YouTube. I'm live on LinkedIn. I'm live on Facebook. So I want to pause and answer any questions that you have. And again, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube, find me, Landlord Life with Karissa Spann. So as a tenant, if you're a tenant, you know someone who's a tenant, what would be the number one concern for you in listening to the situation that I shared today? What would be your number one concern if you were a tenant living in this rental property? What would be your number one concern? Where I talked about this tenant who lived in this rental property, the owner had not been there to inspect the property in a long time. Don't think repairs were completed in a long time, just looking at the huge laundry list of things that had to be completed. What as a tenant would be your number one concern if you lived in a situation like that? Because I know for me, I would have some concerns. I would have concerns living in a rental property if I rented from someone and I had to live in deplorable conditions where the landlord didn't make repairs, nothing was inspected. It's unfair. It's unfortunate that this tenant had to live in that condition. Hey, Alan, thank you so much for tuning in. You said you are dealing with illegal apartment. Alan, are you a landlord? I want to be able to respond to that correctly. Kim, you said traveling bugs. Absolutely. Because here's the thing about traveling bugs. Okay, I see that, Alan. I'm going to come back to you. So Kim, traveling bugs, listen. When it comes to pest control, and just thinking about it makes my skin cringe, bugs and pests will travel, right? They're not confined to just one area. They're not just confined to one apartment or one house. They will travel. And so in this situation, yeah, that's a big concern. That's a big concern, because at the end of the day, the pest control problem will not go away on its own. So yeah, that I can definitely understand why that is a concern. So you said you are a tenant. Okay. That's unfortunate. Okay, so let me go back to your comment. You said that you are dealing with an illegal apartment. Now, I don't know if it's illegal because the landlord does not have a business license, or I don't know the background, the backdrop to this, but if you want to share that information, I'm happy to help unpack this. Or feel free to send me an email and I can definitely revisit this, because I know that sometimes some of you have situations that you want me to share, but it's private. So let me give you my email address just in case. But feel free, if you want to add any additional information to this, Alan, I'm happy to unpack it. All right, so here is a situation where it's a single family house. It's rented as 2 units. Now, here is sometimes why that happens. That's my email address at the bottom of the screen, by the way. Feel free to email me. So sometimes I see owners who will rent the property out. It should be maybe 1 rental unit, and the property owner will split it up to 2 units. Sometimes, in many cases, they want to maximize the income that they're getting off of that property. But just depending on their jurisdiction, and most places would require that landlord to make sure that it is legally set up. Maybe there should be a business license. And And sometimes, Alan, and thank you for that. Sometimes I see owners who have made the mistake by um, having one tenant to pay utilities and the other tenant doesn't. So, for instance, the water bill. Usually, when there's a single family home and it's split up like that, uh, one way that it may be in the legal practice, and I don't know, but I've seen owners who have made the mistake by saying that tenant A has to pay the water bill while tenant B does not. It should definitely, the water should be metered, and if not, that should be a shared expense. But there should never ever be a situation where a landlord is illegally renting out a unit, um, because it is a business, right? And so when owners do that, and thank you for sharing, Alan, when owners do it, it put the owner in a situation where the tenant, when they become knowledgeable, right? I find that more and more tenants are tuning in each and every week. When tenants become knowledgeable about their rights, when they do their research, when they check, when they verify and confirm that the business practice is illegally set up, tenants are beginning to take action. I said it in 2023. We're now in 2024. We are going to see a lot more lawsuits filed against landlords by tenants because of situations like this. So thank you for sharing that, Alan. Feel free to email me, and definitely thank you for tuning in. If you have any other additional information or any other scenarios or topics that you would like for me to share, Alan, or any of you, please let me know, and I will definitely do so. All right, Christina, I'm coming to you. My concern will be, is my landlord okay? Is my landlord having financial issues? Then at some point I will have to put my rent payment in escrow. Maybe that will raise awareness. That's a great point. Thank you for mentioning that. So here's the thing. When it comes to the lack of maintenance repairs by landlords, tenants do have an option to, and let me say this in a gentle way. Tenants do have an option to put their money in a court registry. Now, if the repairs are not completed, landlords are still by law allowed to collect rent. And I know that sometimes tenants will not pay the rent because repairs are not completed. But unless there's a situation where maybe you've gone to court, or as a tenant, you've contacted the court and they have given you the options to pay in a court registry, you're still responsible to pay your landlord. So please make sure that if you are putting your money in a maintenance escrow, in a court escrow or court registry, that you are doing so legally, because if not, and I've seen landlords do it. Christina, true story. I've seen landlords responsible or negligent in making repairs. And sometimes those living conditions were so bad, some of those properties should have been condemned because the landlord had no desire to make repairs. But yet they expected the tenants to pay their rent. Now, in a situation where the tenants did not do it legally, they withheld their rent. The landlord took the tenant to court for non-payment of rent. Listen, at the end of the day, you never want your landlord to take you to court. You never want an eviction for non-payment of rent. So if the landlord is not making repairs, there are legal ways to withhold the rent. But it can't be just something because, oh, well, my landlord didn't make the repairs, so I'm not paying the rent. And maybe you shouldn't, but you want to make sure that it's legally done so it doesn't backfire, because I've seen some situations where it backfired. So, but thank you for sharing that. Hey, Miss Jones, thank you so much for tuning in. You said you're tuned in from Kentucky. Thank you so much. I have a question, but it's a bit lengthy. I tried emailing before and I was asked if I had a question, and I asked but no reply. I would like to share it. Okay. Just give me some of what your concern is. So take a few seconds, Ms. Jones. Let me know what the subject is. Give me a bit of the background, and while I'm live, I can try to unpack it for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. I see that you're tuning in on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for that. So let me share my email address again for those of you who did not get it the first time. That is it right there, info@landlordlife.com. Please email me if you have questions. If you have concerns, please email me. And again, I am not an attorney. I do not give legal advice. I will try to guide you. And if it's a situation, if it's a jurisdiction that I'm not in, I'll look for the resources that are available for you. Okay. So, Ms. Jones, I'm going to pause and give you time to type your concern, your comment in the chat box. I just ask that you give me a little bit of the background so that I can try to address it. And I know that your concern is raising awareness so that others will know. And that's what this is all about. This is what I'm here for, awareness. So go ahead and put that in the comment section for me. That's my email address right there at the bottom of the screen. All right, so let me come to you. All right, Alan. Landlord bought this. He bought a single family, should be repercussion. I agree, Alan, especially if it's a situation where it is illegal. So what I would do in your area, let me see, did you share where you're tuned in from? So I would do some research, Alan. You can always check to see if that landlord has a renter's license, a business license, or whatever is required in that jurisdiction to see whatever the legal requirement is. And okay, thank you for that. So yeah, do some research. And if you don't mind, email me. I can maybe send you some resources to see, what options you have in that jurisdiction. But at the end of the day, you definitely want to make sure that your landlord is doing things legally, making the necessary repairs. So feel free to email me. And again, that's my email address at the bottom of the screen, info@landlordlife.com. Ms. Jones, I'm waiting on your comment. If you want to add additional information that I'm able to share, please let me know. I will do it now. So, Alan, I see your comment that your landlord is trying to evict you. So you definitely want to know what your rights are. So feel free to email me. I'm not happy to hear that you're experiencing that. I don't know the situation, and I can't comment on what I don't know. But if you're able to work it out with your landlord, that's first and foremost. Sometimes situations are not repairable. And if that's the situation, then maybe consider looking for a new place to call home. If this, listen, at the end of the day, here's what I want you to know, that as a tenant, if it's not working out with your landlord, maybe consider finding some place that is a better fit for you. Sometimes it's just not worth a fight to fight with someone if you're not happy there, if they're not happy with you being there, if there's an easier way to resolve this problem. And I don't know your financial situation. I don't know that there are other resources available for you. So I'm not telling you what to do, but sometimes the stress is just not worth it. Sometimes the stress is just not worth it. The hell that you have to go through to make things work is just not worth it. Right. So, but email me, because again, I can't comment on a situation I don't have full knowledge of. Okay. So Ms. Jones, you had a leak from the ceiling in the restroom that lasted over a month, which led to noticing a white and black substance. You let them know about it as soon as you noticed it. Listen, you are amazing, because sometimes tenants don't do that. So thank you for doing that. So you had a leak in your ceiling in the bathroom, which was over a month. I do hope that the landlord took care of the problem. I hope that the landlord fixed the problem. And I hope that the problem didn't become. So here's the thing. Sometimes when there's a leak, it could be coming from, if it's an apartment, it could come from the pipe above, it could come from the toilet above, it could come from maybe the tenant above taking a shower and not putting a shower curtain in, and water just dripping down. But hopefully it's not so bad that it became a severe mold problem and created some sort of health issue. I don't know how long the water problem existed before it eventually ran down, right? Because sometimes there could be a water drip that's taking place and happening over time that may not show up right away in another place. So I don't know the extent of it, but I do hope that if the landlord made the repair, that before the repair was completed, that they dried their space, meaning that they bought in a machine. Now, I don't know how bad it was, but here is an option, right? Sometimes in situations where in tenant units where there's some sort of leak from a unit above, right? We'll bring in a device. We'll make sure that we remove all the moisture from out of the air to minimize the possibility of there being some sort of mold issue, because sometimes landlords will make a repair while there's still moisture. Well, let me just say, some landlords are not making the repairs. They're getting a contractor or professional to make the repairs, assuming and believing that everything is completed, right? And sometimes these contractors are not doing their job. Maybe they will make the repair and there's still moisture in the air, right? Or they think that the repair is completed in addition to it being moisture in the air, only for mold to show up. So I don't know if this happened, Ms. Jones, but thank you for sharing that. Let me go to your next comment. You said that my apartment had been smelling like a porta potty. Ooh, that's god awful. And when the air heat was turned on, it smelled like poop. I was sick, couldn't breathe, had to leave my apartment because you have asthma. So here's the thing. That's nasty, and it's unfortunate that you had to experience that, but I do hope that the problem has been resolved. I hope that the landlord took care of that. Now, if the problem is resolved, I'm going to give that landlord 2 thumbs up. Now, here's the thing. Oh, look at the visual effect. How about that? But here's the thing. As long as there is rental property, as long as there are pipes in the property, something is going to leak, something is going to break, something will go wrong, right? But if you have a landlord that is working to fix those issues, then that's a good thing. Now, I spend a lot of time talking about situations where landlords are not making repairs. Now, as a housing professional, I've been in this industry for almost 30 years. I know that a pipe will leak, a pipe will break. But here's the thing. Nobody can control when an emergency, and that's what an emergency is. It's something that is unexpected at the most unexpected time. And it is not anything that we plan for. We never plan for a pipe to break and water to leak down, and water that leaks down and causes your home to smell like poop. But I do hope that that landlord made the repairs, and if they made the repairs, 2 thumbs up, because I know that some landlords are not making those repairs. So let me see what your next comment is. You said they told me it was nothing they could do for me. I had to get the city involved. They violated them twice. An air quality test was done, and it was mold. Wow. Okay. So that is not good at all, but I'm glad that you got the city involved. So here's the thing. Now that the city is involved, I will ask the question, what is being done now? Because, and I don't know this landlord situation. I don't want to assume that I know whatever is going on with this landlord in the situation. But if the city is involved and the landlord is still not making repairs, what are you hoping to see happen in this situation? Like, what are you expecting? So let me just go to the extreme. Let me go worst case scenario. The city is involved. The landlord has not made the repairs because maybe the landlord cannot afford to make the repairs. What are you hoping to see happen in this situation? Because and you don't have to respond. You don't have to respond to that publicly, Ms. Jones, but that's what I want you to consider. What are you hoping to see happen? Because at the end of the day, that's one of the things that I always put out there to tenants. What are you hoping to see happen in this situation? Do you want this situation to be resolved and you stay in the apartment? Or do you want some sort of financial gain from the situation? Do you want the landlord to pay because of the problem? Because if you want the matter to be resolved, then with the city being involved, what does that look like? Does the landlord have another rental property to put you in? And so these are just some of the questions that I have, right? Because at the end of the day, you should live in a place that's decent, safe, and sanitary. You don't deserve to live in a situation where there's mold and the water that's coming down smells like poop, right? That's just not cool on any level. I don't care who you are. Nobody deserves to live like that. But what are you hoping to see happen? Have you communicated with the landlord? Do they have another rental property that they can put you in? And if so, are you willing to transfer to another property, or are you, just insisting on staying in that unit? Like there are so many questions that I have in this situation, but the fact that the city is involved, I'm curious to see how this matter is going to play out. I'm curious to understand and to know what the landlord actions are or planning to be now that the city is involved. So you said, Ms. Jones, they have 3 other properties that you know of. Are you willing to maybe relocate if that's an option? See, these are just conversations I would suggest having with that landlord, because maybe they could transfer you to another rental property. I don't know if that's an option, but that's definitely something that you can ask. You can definitely put that on the table. Don't feel like you don't have options. And I know that this is uncomfortable. I know that it's something you are hoping to get resolved ASAP, and it should have been resolved. Okay, so I see your comment. You just wanted them to fix it, and the landlord has been ignoring you. You asked the owner's name, and the landlord won't give it to you, but you found it. And I can understand that. And I can understand how sometimes and let me put your comment back up. I can understand how sometimes the property manager won't give you the owner's name, because if they are responsible for making repairs, they're responsible for the day-to-day oversight of the rental property. Their job is to protect their client privacy. So sometimes owners may not want their names revealed. Sometimes owners may not want to get involved, but that landlord should be doing a lot more to make sure that this situation is resolved. So email me so that I can follow up. You said they want you to move to another property. You can't afford it. It's $400 more in rent. And so I guess the final question that I have for me, is my time is long overdue. I guess the final question that I have for you, Ms. Jones, is if in fact they have other properties, if you can't afford it, how long are you willing to stay in that situation? Right. And then to see if there's a way that the landlord could allow you to transfer, considering the circumstance, and you not pay that increase. And then finally, if you are working with a landlord and tenant attorney in your jurisdiction. So those are just questions that I have. Those are just some suggestions that I also have, some things to explore. Have that conversation with the property manager, the property management company that's overseeing that rental property. I thank you for sharing your concerns. And again, I'm so bothered that you have to live and you are experiencing that. So please feel free to email me. Please keep me posted. Any additional questions that you have, Ms. Jones, please email me. Thank you for tuning in on that YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in on my LinkedIn channel. Thank you all for tuning in on Facebook. Listen, I am live each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is what I do. It is an absolute pleasure. And again, if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please find me on YouTube, Landlord Life with Karissa Spann. And if you have questions, comments, remarks, or observations, if there's a topic that you would like for me to cover, feel free to inbox me or email me right there, info@landlordlife.com. This is where you can find me each and every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that this information was of value. I hope that it was helpful for somebody. Please share this. Please share this with somebody else. And if you're watching a replay, thank you so much. My time is up. I absolutely thank you for yours. Please make sure that you tune in next Monday right here, same platform, same time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, I'm Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. I'll see you all next week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now.